Dai, 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 dai. Diddy, dai, 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 dai. Diddy, dai, 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 dai. Ay, ay, dai, dai, dai. Diddy, dai, 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 dai. Ay, dai, 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 dai. Diddy, dai, 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 dai. Diddy, dai, 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 dai. Diddy, dai, 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 dai. Diddy, da, 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 da. Eri na 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 na. Shalom, shalom, beautiful friends. It's meaningful to be with you today on Tisha B'Av, the day Tisha B'Av today, where we commemorate the saddest things that have happened in Jewish history. The day today where we commemorate the Holocaust, pogroms, crusades, exiles, destructions, October 7th, hostages. It's a very intense day in the Jewish calendar. And as a reminder, the reason why the Talmud says we experienced this destruction was because of sinat chinam, baseless hatred. Hatred. It said the first destruction occurred because of the three cardinal sins. What are the three cardinal sins? The three that we should be willing to die before committing. One is idolatry, avodah zarah. One is gilui arayot, like incest or improper sexual relations. And the third being murder. So any of the other mitzvot, if someone says, I'll kill you if you don't do it, we should be willing to break any mitzvah for the sake of life, because Judaism is life-affirming, except for these three cardinal sins. That's the whole destruction of the first temple. But then the whole second destruction, the rabbi said, that baseless hatred is equal to all of those combined. And the Sfat Emet and later Rav Kook famously say that what we need in the world, as opposed to sinat chinam, is ahavat chinam, baseless love, to live with love. Now, some people think that love is kind of a foreign concept to Judaism. Oh, the Christians are about love. Jews are justice. I think that's wrong. I think that that is an overdone distancing from Christian theology. Judaism is about love, fundamentally. It comes up again and again. Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest rabbis, says, that loving people is actually the essence of what Torah is all about. And I could give probably 100 examples, actually, of how central love is. In any case, today's the day where we look at the world. We don't just hold on to victimhood, but we then strive to take responsibility. And so that's my intro into our leadership session today on Tisha B'Av, that actually we talked about whether we should continue this class today and decided ultimately we should continue, because that's exactly what Tisha B'Av ultimately is about us affirming our own leadership in the world in any ways that we can. So with that, our session today, session 3, is about being on the dance floor while also being on the balcony. So let's start with a poll question. Do you prefer to dance at the party, to sit to the side and watch those dancing, or wait, there's dancing at my parties? So do you prefer to dance at the party? Do you prefer to sit to the side and watch those dancing? Or wait, there's dancing at my parties? Okay, 71% say they prefer to dance at the party. 29% prefer to watch those dancing. And nobody claims they either don't go to parties or don't go to parties that have dancing. So, okay, very good. So that was a little bit of a humorous intro to dance floor on the balcony. So friends, today in talking about leadership, I want to share a concept that I learned from my professors, Ron Heifetz and Marty Linsky at Harvard Kennedy School of Government, that many world leaders have learned from them. And this concept, they use a metaphor of being on the dance floor and being on the balcony to talk about the modes of engagement and awareness that one needs to bring to leadership. One of the imperatives of leadership is that you're always able to step back to the balcony and observe the situation strategically and ethically from a systems perspective. And at the same time, also being required to never stop dancing, to keep engaged in relationship and in the action. There are people who really only like to focus on one or the other. There are academic types who stay above the business of doing, who observe and contemplate what it means. They remain in the balcony. Then there's implementers who do what they're told, busy with accomplishing immediate tasks. In order to lead towards change, though, in whatever context and toward whatever goals, a person needs to hold both of these modes. Some people might understand this idea of a splitting of your time between sometimes doing strategy and sometimes implementation, or today thinking about the big picture and tomorrow working out the details. But I believe it's really a dual consciousness at all times rather than a splitting of times. Because whatever change we're working towards, we don't have the luxury to leave the dance floor. There may be moments to pause and reflect, but by and large, leadership does not allow for ever removing either one's immediate influence or one's sensitivity to the needs and feelings of one's constituents in the moment on the dance floor. But leadership also doesn't allow one to ever lose sight of the vision or of the larger forces at play. You have so many coalitions, interest groups, ideological groups, not just one dance partner to worry about. Now, whether you like Bibi Netanyahu, hate Bibi Netanyahu, somewhere in between, wherever our relationship, imagine being in a moment like this, where you have a large segment of Israeli society saying, just make a hostage deal. And you have a large segment of Israeli society saying, don't stop until you've uprooted Hamas. And then you've got forces like the UN and other countries pushing this way and that, Biden administration supporting and challenging in this way and that. And then you have a 7-front warfare, with the Houthis and with Hezbollah and with Iran and with Hamas and in the West Bank and fill in the blank and on and on. And you're actually trying to constantly evaluate the moving pieces and the strategy, and yet constantly on an hourly basis, if not more often, right, needing to make hard decisions around execution. You can't just be like, you know what, I'm just going to choose one mode. I'm not going to reflect on all the changing pieces, or I'm going to remove myself from, making the decisions that require in this hour. But again, this series is not about the presidents and prime ministers of the world. This is about each of us and how each of us in our own way has to engage. So friends, this is a Torah consciousness. It's about multiple consciousnesses. This dual perspective is reflected in one of the stories of the Talmud, which we come back to again and again at Valley Beit Midrash, given how crucial it is to what we are. In Masechet Kiddushin, in the Talmudic tractate of Kiddushin on marriage, we learn it happened that Rabbi Tarfon and the elders were gathered in the loft of Nitza's house of in Lod. A question was posed to them: is study greater or is action greater? Rabbi Tarfon answered, saying, of course, action is greater. We changed the world, tikkun olam. Rabbi Akiva answered, saying, study is greater. We're a people of the book. We are a people of intellect. All of them answered, saying, Study is greater because study leads to action. Now, of course, there's types of study that don't lead to action, but they mean the good type of moral study that ultimately does inspire us and move us to act. And so their answer is both, but if picked to choose, we have to pick this study. The rabbis are asking, which has priority? Is it doing, being in the action on the dance floor, or is it thinking, being in the contemplation of the big picture on the balcony, reading books and enjoying the newspaper and loving the seat of analysis and commentary? Not only do we have a machloket here, a disagreement between two sages, which means both answers are true, but we end with consensus around a paradox that breaks down the division between the two answers. Study is greater, but study's greatness comes from it leading us to moral action. So doesn't that mean action is actually more important then? It means both are the most important, but really they can't be separated. Thought and action are integral. I can't say the word. Integrally. I can't say the word. They're both integral and they're connected. So let's take a closer look at this story, while also zooming out to its context. The sages were gathered in the loft of Nitza's house of Lod. Why were the rabbis meeting there? Why were they meeting in this house? The answer is that this was a time of harsh religious persecution by Rome. Again, relevant to today, because the second destruction is from Rome. This is a time of heavy persecution, which was trying to destroy Judaism by forbidding the practice and teaching of Torah. The sages were risking their lives to meet in secret in an attic in Lod. At least some of them were actively involved in coordinating the Bar Kokhba rebellion at the time. Right? Just as a reminder, this was probably our most divided period in Jewish history. People think today is being divided. No comparison, really. I mean, you have the emerging Christians. Those were Jews. You have the Zealots who want to fight the Romans. You have Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who wants to give in to the Romans and just take the Talmudic Academy. You have those who want to hold on to the temple, right? You've got the Sadducees, the Pharisees, right? You've got like a dozen factions, by far the most divided period in Jewish history. In any case, the Bar Kokhba rebellion emerging, and they couldn't know if they would be able to meet again. At any moment, they might be captured as they're sitting in this attic debating learning versus action. Indeed, the two named in the episode, Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva, by the way, Rabbi Tarfon, if you recall, is also our teacher of, which we'll come back to in this series as well. It's not on you to complete the work of the world, but you can't not participate. That's Rabbi Tarfon also. So Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva debating here, and Rabbi Akiva, who I mentioned earlier, who said love is the most important priority. They're both listed among those later martyred by the Romans for their Jewish activities. So on Tisha B'Av, we're mourning the loss of this debate. We're mourning the loss of these two sages who were also martyred from Roman persecution. Yeah, which is also just a reminder, as scary as things are today, which I don't wish to diminish in one bit, rising anti-Semitism from aspects of the far left and of the far right, threats from Iran, right, the Gaza war, as bad as everything is, right, there's really no comparison to everything prior to the last, number of decades, really post-67, I would say, of instability, of martyrdom, just powerlessness. And so there's a hope to be found in our mourning. In any case, Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva are martyred. And yet they are taking the time here in fear for their lives to discuss large philosophical questions, which continue to be relevant throughout the generations, whether study or action is more important. Much of the Jewish world continues to be divided. What's the role of a synagogue? Is it to roll up our sleeves and be volunteers and build interfaith bridges in the world? Is it prayer and study? Well, it's easy today with when synagogues have wealth to say we're going to do it all. And there's a large staff and there's large clergy and there's a large, we can do it all. But in throughout Jewish history, when we have limited resources, what are the true priorities? Are we a people of study or a people of action? As pressing and unavoidable as the needs of the dance floor are at the moment, the rebellion, the survival, the sages do not abandon the perspective of the balcony. Even while they're striving to survive and strategically engage with their survival, they won't step out of the balcony, literally in the attic. We also know that the sages never eschew extremely detailed particulars in favor of an elevated abstract vision. There's no difference for them. Professor Susan Handelman, author of The Slayers of Moses, describes rabbinic thought in contrast to Greek thought, saying, moreover, individual, particular existence now assumed supreme importance, for it was only God's constant creation and supervision of every particular thing that sustained and continually called it forth from nothingness. The universal was demoted and the particular given primacy in direct opposition to the status they had been allotted in Greek philosophy. And she goes on to describe how, in the associative style of the Talmud, a legalistic discussion of a detail of ritual may blossom into a discussion of ethics or metaphysics. Right? We start with the particular and move to the universal, as opposed to the Greek approach. When the rabbis praise the greatness of David HaMelech, King David, they imagine him saying to God, Master of the universe, am I not pious? For all the kings of the East and the West sit bound up in their honor, while my hands are dirty with blood and miscarried fetuses and placentas in order to declare a woman pure for her husband. The rabbinic ideal of a monarch ruling over all of Israel is one who literally gets his hands dirty, never losing direct contact with the messy, personal details of the lives of the people he leads. In my own work as in Jewish education and activism, this need for dual consciousness manifests around deciding which issues to be vocal about and when. On the one hand, we try to stay on the dance floor, keeping in touch with what topics are activating our community at every moment, so we can be present and provide insights for the conversations they care about. On the other hand, if we are only on the dance floor, we would be swept from hot topic to hot topic, following the interests of the corporate media and the whims of politicians. We would never have a 10-part series or a 40-part series. We would just have the series of the day. Part of my role in leadership is also seeing the broader vision from the balcony, building and maintaining deeper, sustained commitments to compromised and marginalized populations. But then again, it's not only about maintaining our own abstract ideals within ourselves. Leadership means being with people that we are leading, responding to what they care about, speaking in a language they can hear, being with them on the dance floor. We have to maintain both priorities and balance between them. There's one more piece of this dual consciousness that I want to be sure to point out. And that is to say that the microcosm between partners on the dance floor reflects the macrocosm of the view from the balcony and vice versa. What do I mean? It's imminently possible when you're in a group fighting for change in the world, fighting against cruel systems of power and balance, to enact those very same dynamics of dominance and marginalization within the very group fighting for change. You can talk about injustice in the largest scales of the outside world without noticing that you're perpetuating the same injustices in the microcosm of your very efforts. That danger is another reason why it's so vital to bridge between the ideals you have on the balcony and the actions we're taking on the dance floor. Audre Lorde, the great 20th century Black lesbian poet, philosopher, and activist, was invited to speak on a panel at a feminist conference in 1979. She used her time speaking to harshly criticize the organizers of the conference and the members of the feminist movement for recreating the oppressions and ignorance of the patriarchy within the movement itself. The ways the general feminist movement was marginalizing women of color, women from the so-called third world, and lesbians, she said, was detrimental to all involved, in the same ways that the patriarchy's marginalization of women is detrimental to society and people of all genders. In these remarks, She said the now famous words, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may all allow us temporarily to beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change." So sometimes people say with the real politic, you should do whatever it takes to win, right? But actually, that will be a destructive process. We might get a short-term win. It also is true in warfare to do whatever it takes to win, but actually engaging the tools of oppression that the worst, most cruel regimes use will never lead us down a path of victory. To turn around the point and phrase it positively by being on the dance floor and the balcony, we can learn from what we desire to see in the broad world how we must behave in our own interpersonal interactions. And we can learn from the challenges we face and overcome in our interpersonal interactions what to aspire to and how to achieve it on the broad scale. You know, sometimes I think many of us are still kind of taking the child out of us. Whether we're 40 or 60 or 80, there's still a childhood mentality that is sometimes hard to remove from our consciousness, whether it is a notion of entitlement, whether it is waiting for mom and dad to solve our life's problems, whatever it is. And this book that I enjoyed recently called The Orphaned Adult by Alexander Levy writes about the complexity of being a responsible adult. And he writes, adult life is a bit like trying to be the captain of an ocean liner and learning how to sail at the same time, not knowing the trip's purpose or its destination. Each life is a singular adventure with its own measure of challenge, pleasure, mystery, tedium, and turbulence. Just in case that was a little too fast, I'm going to read the first sentence again. Adult life is a bit like trying to be the captain of an ocean liner and learning how to sail at the same time, not knowing the trip's purpose or its destination. Indeed, sometimes we have a lot of responsibility, and we're learning how to sail, even though there's many people and who are relying on us, and we're not totally clear on our purpose. Friends, may we all learn how to lead while we also learn how to just stay afloat. I wish us this Tisha B'Av in the spirit of our learning, the rebuilding of healthy societies and the rebuilding of hope. And I would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening, and now I'd love to listen to you. Hi, Toby.
Hi. So I have one question for you.
Great.
Do we ever get over that feeling of being the captain of a large cruise ship and then learning how to sail? Because I'm 75 years old and I have no freaking clue. And I was a death penalty trial attorney for, like 15 of my 25 years of service. And every time I walked into the courtroom, I never had any idea what was going to happen. You think
Right.
you do. You think you do because you've interviewed all the witnesses and, you go in with a plan. But I almost never did that plan actually go according to plan. So like I say, my question to anybody who wants to answer is there anybody out there who actually feels like they have sort of a grasp of what they're doing? Because I don't. So
Awesome, Toby. Good. I invite folks to reflect on that and engage with that question if you'd like in the chat or by unmuting yourself. And just my own two reflections. One is the reminder of Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz's quote, that if you think you're found, you're lost. And I love that, because it is easy at various stages in our life to feel like we figured it all out, like the world is kind of clear. And I think we might be more confused in those moments than ever before. And I would say that if we're not to some degree still figuring out how to sail, perhaps we're not challenging ourselves enough in life. That we need to always have a certain number of challenges so that we are, in addition to, moving that ocean liner forward, trying to figure out how to do it and trying to figure out our purpose, not our purpose of yesterday, but our purpose of today. What is the purpose of my life today? Or as Viktor Frankl once famously said, the question is not what is the meaning of life? The question is what is the meaning of my life? And I would just add to that, what is the meaning of my life today? In a way that challenges me to be learning. So yeah, Toby, thank you for that. In fact, in my own experience, I often find that some younger adults are more likely to have certainty than my friends who are kind of in the more senior years. Those in their more senior years have experienced enough to know how uncertain life is, and how much humility is needed to navigate, the changing times. Where some of my friends who are in their 20s and 30s, have had lesser experience and feel like, oh, life is pretty predictable because for the last 6 months it kind of looked like this, you know. And so, of course, it's never all determined by age, but that's just one of my reflections there. Yes. Okay. Yes. Hi, David. You want to go?
Sure, I'll go. Yeah, in response to Toby, I can relate, the fake it till you make it idea. Um, and that's really part of growing up that maybe you thought, or I thought, my parents knew everything. This is the way things happen. Or I was mad at my parents for not doing X, Y, Z. But as you grow up, you learn, they're just people too. I love what Gary, you said last week, I think, that as we get older, we get more comfortable in our own skin. And also we realize that everybody's faking it in a sense. We're just trying to be responsible adults, but it's hard to make these ethical decisions. It's hard to know what to do sometimes.
Yeah, David, well said. Thank you. In the spirit of this conversation of aging as saging, I just want to also add that the one part about that I think that in aging we learn to get off the balcony is worrying as much about the perception of others. Just in my own life, and certainly this is my experience in talking with others as well. The ability to stop caring as much about what people think about us, where people in their youth are often obsessed with that. That when one dance, the question is no longer, "Oh, how well am I dancing?" Like, what are people thinking of how well I'm dancing? It's just, am I enjoying the dance? Right? Being on the balcony is not about, that it's the consciousness of self, not the consciousness of others' perceptions. Or if I like to golf, it's not the insecurity of, oh, am I golfing well enough? What do my golf partners think of me? Right? I'm just enjoying the game because I love the game, or whatever the game is. Right? And so the balcony cannot be from the perspective of judgment, but rather of analysis. Yes, Gary Gartzman.
Hey,
Hi.
nice to be back.
Nice to be back. Nice to see you.
Missed you guys. I think a little spin on that. I think it's not that we learn to care less about what people think. I think we learn that they're not thinking about us much at all. And that's the advice I give to people who want to play golf. They go, I don't want to play golf because I'm not very good. And, people look at me funny and this and that. And I go, trust me, they don't care about you at all. They're so into their own game. And that golf holds true for life, or life holds true for golf. They
That
just
is so well said. That is so well said. Yeah. I wish you could teach that to my kids who are so nervous about striking out or missing the shot, right? Or getting the wrong answer in class. It just takes so long. Humans suffer so much before they realize exactly this point that, like, people are so immersed in their own worlds that they really don't care so much about how you're doing. So yeah, thank you for that, Gary. That's so well said. Yeah. Hi, Eileen.
Hi, as a member of a wise aging group, we have discussed this and other topics, and I think that the benefit of getting older is getting wiser, and as a result, we do the things that are important to us without looking around to see if we're getting reactions or if we're getting support, because that's no longer necessary for our growth and development. We're now at a stage where we're doing what we do for ourselves.
Yeah, so well said, Eileen. There's a little story that I told my 5-year-old when he was falling asleep last night that really touches on what you just said, Eileen. That we've all heard before, I suspect, but it's worth reminding us because it's such a simple image for those who think think through images. And so I told him the story about someone who gave him an empty jar and they gave him rocks, and you put the rocks in the jar, and they say, is the jar full? And the child says, yep, jar's full of rocks. Said, here's some sand. Can you put sand in? And the child pours the sand into the jar of rocks. Says, oh, actually, the sand can fit between the rocks. And the teacher says, or parent says, is the jar full? The child says, yep, jar's full of rocks and sand. And gives them a cup of water. And they pour the water into the cup. Says, oh, I guess it could fit water too, right? So actually, it's not so full. But then the ultimate lesson is if you put the water in first, nothing else can fit. You have to put the biggest things in your life that matter the most in first, these rocks, in order for the little things to still have some room. So those who fill it with the little things, there's no space for the big things that matter most. And so he was really thinking about that story and what it means to fill our life with things that matter most to us, and how easy it is to get distracted from that. Because if you're an anti-procrastinator like me, the thing you do is not what matters most. It's the thing that is it's the thing that's got to get done. The thing that's got to get done, whether it's got to be done today or in 3 weeks. So you rush to get done whatever's got to get done, as opposed to saying, hold on, what's the most important thing for me to get done? So that's part of my own work to work on. But yes, thank you, Eileen, for that. Okay, yeah, Gary Friedlander, hi.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry, I tuned in late. I was helping my 80-year-old neighbor with some electrical issues, and time ran away with me. First of all, I wanted to address Toby. I think that, at least for myself, I'm in the same category as you are, that as soon as I think I got it all figured out, life throws me a curveball, and there's different life challenges, and then I shift, and then I think I got it, and then I don't get it. So, and in like that, life, we have such little control of what happens in life, not only to ourselves, but to the world. That becomes, I think, the challenge for me is to decide, is this a big challenge, or is this a little piece of sand among a bunch of rocks? So, maybe that's an agey thing. I'll be 72, so maybe that's a 70s thing. The second thing I want to say, you mentioned earlier, and I think I caught just the beginning, about the 30-foot view versus the dancing partner on the floor. A little different take. I work with residents and students and what have you, and they're always looking at the dancing partner. They never really get a chance to look at the 30-foot view or the balcony view. And I think as we age, we're able to look at the balcony view or 30-foot elevation more clear, because we've come with experience on the table. And I have found that in my teaching that it's important for them to guide them rather than to the moment, but having look into the future. In this case, in medicine, what happens if something goes wrong? If something goes wrong, what do you do? Blah 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 blah. But I think you can use that in life too. I have 70 years of experience, and my 18-year-old granddaughter has 18 years old experience. So we bring wisdom to the table with that. So I think they're a contract. I think it's both. You can see it from different ways. The balcony view or the dancing with the partner, and to end it with, when I get on a dance floor, I can't dance. Who cares? I'm having fun, and I'm a lousy golfer, but who cares? I like to be out and do whatever I want to do. So I don't care. So.
Very well said. Very well said. Yeah, I've always been in awe and wondered how medical practitioners find the time to study the latest medical research amidst all of their demands, or people in the legal field as laws evolve, or accountants, how accountants are aware of all the various changes that are always happening. In my own field, I don't know why some people think that rabbis are supposed to be foreign policy experts. Oftentimes, if I meet someone, they'll say, "So, what can Israel do?" I'm like, I studied Talmud. You think I have the answers of foreign policy strategy? I'm as intrigued as you are, but thankfully, I'm less in the business of the everyday changing research. As someone who is a bit of an ethicist who, is very much engaged with contemporary ethical issues, I do feel the need to be on top of all types of research. But yeah, I think it's a great point what you're saying, that that in many fields, it is very hard in that work to be in both places. And I appreciate that comment around age as well, around that point and experience. Very well said. Let's see, who have we not heard from yet? Whether it's Judy or Nicole or Steve. Hi, Steve. Steve and then
Hello.
Judy. Great.
Two things I love. One is Tisha B'Av. And I concede all the bad things that have happened, but it's one of the reasons I love Tisha B'Av is that despite the history of bad things happening to us Jews, we have not only survived, but we've prospered and we've flourished. And I think bravo and stand up and love what has happened despite all of the negatives that preceded all of the good things. And not only that, we've survived, prospered, and flourished, but we're still asking questions. And I think it's just a great holiday to recognize and commemorate where we've come from, where we are, and where we're going. Second, I love dance. And everything that everybody has said about dance is so apropos to what I feel. The energy, the not knowing, the knowing that I don't have to be perfect, the knowing that I can actually close my eyes and still remain on my feet, the music, the having a partner, and also you learn a lot about yourself and a lot about other people by the way they dance. Are they rigid? Are they carefree? Or throwing their arms up around? Are you doing that? Dance is so wonderful in terms of energy and music, inspiration and knowledge. So that's about all I can say.
Very nice. Very nice. I love those thoughts. Actually, to connect your two together in the realm of Jewish eschatology, is that traditionally we say Mashiach will come, the redemption will come to the world on Tisha B'Av. To some degree, that this time of sadness will move into a time of joy. And what will it look like? It'll look like a dance. That the most righteous, there'll be concentric circles of dancing, and those who lived with righteousness will be closer to the center, of kind of what's happening, and those who kind of lived cruelly are kind of on the outside. What's going on out there? So, in fact, there is a connection of virtue and dance here as well, as it's built into this day. And your powerful point around how much there is to be proud of on this day, what's been achieved and how much further we have to go. But yes, I love that, and I love your points around how we can dance, carefree. Hi, Judy.
Hi. I was just thinking about when we were kids, and this is long before your time, Shmuly. There was a lot of emphasis on IQ and intelligence and just raw talent in a way that de-emphasized what we've come to appreciate in education and in the workplace, which is the quality of stick-to-itiveness or grit. And it seems to me that the person who has grit is fine with dancing until they get it adequate, and the person who is brilliant may not have that same kind of recovery when life throws them a curveball. And we all have to be prepared for showing up in a different way than we're used to. If you've got a child who is trans and your expectations of how their life was going to develop is completely changed, or you get fired from a job, or you have a health setback, that this quality of grit is important no matter your raw intelligence or your raw talent. So I know that's not quite the big picture versus the small picture, but for people slaving away on the dance floor who may not feel that they're very good dancers, the stick-to-itiveness is really important.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, the perseverance, Eileen says. Yeah, and the grit
Right.
of, yeah, being able to really change with the times. Curveballs are thrown at us, whether it's we get cancer, God forbid, or our partner or a child, or something drastic changes in our career or in our finances, or something unexpected around the life of our child. There's so many different possibilities. And yeah, and having stayed in the dance helps us cultivate that ability to weather those storms, and adapt with the changing times. I love that. And I think that is part of, going back to what Steve said as well, part of the resilience of Am Yisrael, part of the resilience of the Jewish people throughout time is, that, that commitment to being in it. And to pick up on this point Eileen wrote in the side around the Dalai Lama being fascinated with the Jews and the Jewish survival in the diaspora, first I want to give a little plug to a session that's happening tomorrow morning. Rabbi Yitz Greenberg is giving a book talk on his magnum opus here at VBM from 9 to 10 a.m. Pacific. That's noon Eastern. He was one of the people at that meeting with the Dalai Lama. And he said the Dalai Lama wasn't so intrigued with his answer. He was more into Zalman Schachter Shalomi, because the Dalai Lama was a mystic, as a mystic, and was interested in more of a mystical answer, whereas Yitz Greenberg is much more of a misnagid or a litvak. He's much more of a rationalist. And his book talking about tomorrow, The Triumph of Life, his theology is built around this notion, thank you, Alex, of that what is most central to Judaism is life affirmation. This life, this world, and working that out, as opposed to transcending, this life or this world, or downplaying the importance of it. And the Dalai Lama wasn't so intrigued by that. But in any case, part of the life affirmation, what Judy's talking about here, being on the dance floor and cultivating the grit, is affirming that I am in the life I'm in. There's no escaping it. There might be aspects of our life I wish I had chosen different or had happened differently, but there's no escaping the life that we find ourselves in. And we can affirm it and take responsibility within it and find joy in it, even if we wish so much was different. It's not about the next world or the next life, as much as affirming that I have responsibility and leadership to show in this very moment. And I can never stop my dance. I die when I stop my dance. No matter where you go, there you are. Love that. That's what's his name? Zinn, not Zinn, Kabat-Zinn. John. I think that's the title of the book written by John Kabat-Zinn, but maybe I'm wrong. But no matter where you go, there you are. There's no escaping it. So yeah, thank you, Judy. Love that. Okay, I see a new hand has been raised. Oh yes, David, is that a new hand or an old hand?
It's an old hand, so I'll be quiet unless.
Okay.
Unless you're.
Well, I think everyone here has spoken. So yeah, the floor is open again. Unless Alex and Carrie want to jump in, but their videos are off right now. But if the floor is open and wants to kind of re-engage.
Okay, another thing that I thought of with the dancing, since I tend to be more academic and kind of a watcher, but dancing is so important. I was thinking of Hasidism and dancing, and Tevye, when he says, I'm gonna to life l'chaim, dance when my heart lies panting on the floor, and just the idea that Judaism is a real happy, sad religion. We always have that minor tone in our music, but we're always happy too. I mean, it's this mixture of a full life, and dancing is part of it.
It's beautiful. Yes, it's a very old and rich tradition, and people often think of Jews as just kind of, very confined and contained, people of the mind. It's just not true. We have so much movement in our tradition and so much bodily expression, that is a part of what we're doing. And that Hasidic tradition is certainly a big part of it, what you said there. And as another reminder, that the most famous Jewish day of dancing is Simchat Torah. And that sadly was October 7th this year. So I've heard a few people say Simchat Torah was our Tisha B'Av this year, so let Tisha B'Av be our Simchat Torah this year. Yeah, so, but yeah, anyways, thank you for that. And Jewish weddings are, I think, the best. Like if somebody told me they could only come to one Jewish experience they could attend, what would I send them to? Like which holiday or which institution? I would say go to a Jewish wedding. The experience of a chuppah, the experience of dancing and dancing for those getting married is so awesome. And people who I thought would never dance publicly, who I see now doing wild and crazy things in front of the people getting married. It's really such a joy to watch. I'm going to read what Judy wrote in the side here. God wants us to be joyful even when our hearts lie panting on the floor. How much more can we be joyful when there's really something to be joyful for? Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, to find the good and the meaning and the joy of life in bad times, and all the more so in good times.
That's the lyric.
Thank you. What's that?
That's the lyric from Fiddler.
Oh, what you like? Everything you just put was one of the lyrics. Oh, okay. It shows that it's been a decade since I saw it. I think it's currently playing here in town, but it's over. It's over. Oh, it's over. Okay. Good. So thank you. Toby, is that a new hand or old hand?
That'd be a new one.
Good, great.
I just want to reflect on the opposition between dancing and observing. I can speak from my own personal experiences. I was always much better at school than I was at actual life. And so my initial viewpoint of everything came from the academic side. I was a big reader and I could memorize things and could quote all kinds of weird stuff. And my mother, what I discovered was that I was actually afraid to step out and actually do anything because I wasn't very facile with doing. That was not my strong suit. And my mother, the great Musar sage, said, okay, be afraid, feel the fear, but get out there anyway. And I think for those of us who fancy ourselves as not an activist or not a doer, that there's always something that you can do. You don't have to be the guy carrying the big, with the black power fist or whatever, but there's always an action that you can be comfortable taking.
Right. So well said. Thank you, Toby. Yes, very inspiring. Yes. And, one of the popular phrases in my house now among my kids is, Dad, you're so out of touch. That's so old fashioned. Using phrases or singing songs or whatever it is, there is a striving, for better or worse, to be in touch. Now, politically, you see this all the time. You probably remember the famous case where I'm pretty sure it was the first Bush. He was asked, what does it cost for, a carton of eggs these days? And he had no clue. He had literally no clue. And so now politicians, if you watch them, they're always trying to demonstrate that they're not out of touch with the common person, that they're on the dance floor. And so they do things all the time, like they stop at restaurants in a city to show that they're eating and where the commoners eat their food, right? Look, I'm not out of touch. Like I know what it costs to buy a salami sandwich. You know what I mean? Actually, I don't know if they paid actually, but look, I'm on the dance. And so there is this dynamic of like, how do we not get out of touch with actually all the changes happening? One of the reasons we read the newspaper or watch whatever or listen to podcasts or however we take in news, is because we're afraid of being out of touch. But what is it we want to be in touch with, and what are we okay falling out of touch with? There's simply too much information. The world is changing too fast to be on the balcony for everything. When I choose a podcast or when I choose to read something, what is it that I wish to have the social capital for, being in touch with that aspect of reality, right? Or that I wish to, be sure that I understand all the changing dynamics, because everything in life is changing and there's only so much I can take in, right? So yes, anyways, yes, floor is back open. Yes, hi, Eileen.
So there's so many choices available to us. we have to be extremely careful how we spend our time and not go down rabbit holes.
Exactly. And one of those rabbit holes is letting media control what is important to us. Because it's very easier for media to create the headlines and tell us what really matters in the world is what the media tells us is the front pager. And for us to proactively go beyond the corporate media priorities of what's going to sell papers, or what's going to attract podcast listeners, and actually like proactively say, I want to seek out to understand X, Y, and Z because that's what matters to me, right? That's what I want to know about. And not only is it interesting to me because I want to engage in things interesting, part of my leadership in the world, by which I mean what I can contribute to my family or my community or my society, what I want to contribute either charitably or as a volunteer or as a teacher, I need to take the responsibility to learn more in the area where I want to contribute as a philanthropist, as a volunteer, as a teacher, as a parent, right? As a grandparent, right? How am I prioritizing the knowledge I want to take into my life to be around the areas I wish to contribute most? And if there's not an alignment there, how do I get it realigned?
In NLP, that's called incongruent.
What is NLP? Excuse my ignorance. What's NLP?
Neuro-linguistic programming.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Great. Thank you. Yes, hi, Judy.
I think that we also have to be cognizant of when our activities don't align with our priorities in life.
Yes.
Because like Eileen was saying, you can go down rabbit holes many ways. And one of them is to become a crusader for something over here, and maybe your life, or your children, your spouse, your soul needs something different to be a complete human being and to have a complete relationship with the family. And you can't be all things everywhere all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You have to figure out where your investments priorities are at a given time. So sometimes we need to be in the balcony, letting some of the action go without us because we have to regain perspective or regain focus or regain our a sense of our priorities and to test the action against what we truly value most in life.
Awesome. Awesome. So well said. Yes, for us to all work on that alignment, sometimes it's the categories of what brings us pleasure and joy and enjoyment in our lives. Sometimes it's our moral priorities, our relationship priorities. But yes, it's so easy just to go to coffee with someone simply because they reached out rather than saying like, who are the people, that I want to prioritize my time with? And is that always aligned with just what comes my way versus who I choose? So too in causes. It's easy for the movements that are gaining steam and get the most attention to show up for those causes as opposed to saying, well, what are the causes I really care about, right? And the book that my friend recommends, okay, so they like it, doesn't mean I have to read it. Like, what are the books that actually are the ones I really want to be reading rather than just stacked up on my table because someone told me it was good, right? So yeah, I think our greatest asset is our time. Our very limited time and making wise decisions on how to fill that time. But to sort of conclude, the one thing I'm sure about is that one of the best hours I spend in my life is the hour I spend with you all. So this session is very aligned with my life priorities, and so I'm grateful to you all because if you didn't show up, I couldn't do this. I couldn't do this session. So thank you for giving me that gift that I can think about these topics and discuss them with you. So friends, I already shared that tomorrow we have Yitz Greenberg. On Thursday, we have Sarah Bonham-Benor, who is a professor at HUC in LA of linguistics at HUC. I said that already. And lots of other things going on. Next week, we'll have session 4. And after this 10-part series, I'm very excited about a series that's coming up, but I'm not going to tell you today. I'll tell you another day. Okay. Have a great day. And not just a great day, meaningful Tisha B'Av, where all the sadness of the world can be transformed into joy, and all of the despair can be transferred into hope, and all of the brokenness can be transformed into rebuilding. God bless.